So in this video we'll be doing a Maths March 2021 mix sheet and going through some exam questions covering the topics of surds, quadratics, polynomials, coordinate geometry, binomial probability, logarithms and regular bog standard probability. Now the mix sheet is marked out at 80 marks and should last around about 90 minutes. Now I will include a copy of this mix sheet in the description below for you to download, or what you can do is pause the screen on each of the questions. I will go through the question papers the questions rather slowly for you to pause the video, and then what I'll do is as soon as I've gone through it I'll go through the answers. Now the thing to note with regards to question 1 is that although I don't know what the quality of your screen is going to be like, but it is a plus sign on both the numerator and the denominator, so that fraction should read 5 root 2 plus 2 and 3 root 2 plus 4, and it needs to be expressed in the form of m plus n root 2. And what we'll do now is we'll go through the answers. So before we get started, let me just emphasize something on this particular question and the fact that the signs in the surd are both positive. Let me just, they do look like subtract. So in terms of the first question, then what we need to do is show that then we've got this surd can be expressed in the form of m plus n root 2, where m and n are integers. So here we need to rationalize the denominator. So here, if I start off by writing the question. Now, although your calculator will allow you to do this, and actually you can use your calculator, but it just means that you won't get any marks for it. So we can automatically use our calculator to work out what m and n should be, but we still need to show our working out. So again, we need to do multiply both the top and the bottom by the denominator, flipping. Here I've got 5 root 2 plus 2 3 root 2 minus 4 all over 2 4 2, and I should really learn how to write in a straight line. So then moving on from this, what we should have now, that would actually get me 1 mark. I actually did do that. So the next thing I've got to do is now expand and simplify. So here, looking at the numerator, I got 30 minus 20 root 2 plus 6 root 2 minus 8. It's all over, that's going to be 2. Again, because looking at the simplifications, and that will get me 1 mark for expanding and simplifying. So the last and final mark comes from actually going on to simplify this further. So I've got 30 take away 8, which is 22, minus, and it's going to be 14 root 2 over 2. Then obviously then I can cancel the 2, so I've got 7, 11, give me a final answer of 11, 7, 2. Yeah, be my answer. So again, do I need to emphasize what m and n are? No, because all it tells me is that m and n should be whole numbers, and that's exactly what they are. So moving on to question 2. So again, question 2 refers to quadratics, and the first part refers to completing the square. So from this, what we need to do is, and again, it's only worth 2 marks. So you get 1 mark for having the correct number, correct value of p, and 1 mark for the correct value of q. So here we've got x minus 3 squared plus 16 minus 9. And simplifying that, we get x minus 3 squared plus 7. So it then says for b, curve has the equation of y equals x squared minus 6x plus 16. And one thing you should note is that that is the same as what we've got here. Using your answer part A or otherwise, find the coordinates of the vertex of the minimum point. Well, the fact that we've now got this into computing a square mode, then your minimum is if x plus a squared plus b, then your vertex, or your maximum minimum point, is going to be at minus a b. So for this, where is the vertex going to be? Well, if a is positive here, then a is going to be negative here. So a equals minus 3, so it's going to be plus 3, and b is going to equal 7. Is two answers. In terms of the coordinates, then it's just going to be 3. For the next one, in terms of sketching the graph, well, if I draw my set of axes, be relatively straight. Now it's going to cross at when x equals 0, so that's going to cross at 16, so that's going to be the y-intercept. And the next thing I've got to do is look at the minimum point, which is 3, 7. So imagine 3 is going to be here, 7 is going to be there. So it should look like. Now, one thing I would suggest that you do when you are sketching is try and do the curve first and do the interception point labeling after. So here, that's going to be 16 and that's going to be 3. And if I wanted to, I could label that as 7. Really, it's not really necessary. So, and that's just 2. So part B3 says state the equation of the line of symmetry. Now the line of symmetry is going to go through this line here. That is x equals 3, 1 mark. And then finally it says describe the geometric transformation that maps the graph of y equals x squared onto the equation that we've had all day from the start of this equation. Now with this, it is graph transformations, but because it's looking at quadratics, all I need to do is compare the minimum points of both these two graphs. So on y equals x squared, the minimum point is at 0, 0, which if I wrote that as a column vector, would be 0, 0. And on y equals x squared minus 6x plus 16, that the minimum point is at 3, 7. Write that as a column vector 3, 7. So looking at how do I get from this to this, well, the answer here is going to be a translation. It always is. And the column vector is going to be 3, 7. There is my final answer. Now moving on to question 3. So question 3 is coordinate geometry, and it says that a line has equation y equals mx minus 1, where m is a constant. The curve has the equation of y equals x squared minus 5x plus 3. Show that the x coordinates should say of any intersection. So straight away you see intersection. One topic that should come into mind is simultaneous equations. So what we need to do is I need to substitute this equation into this equation. So let's have a look at doing that. So here they both equal y. So what I can do is I can x squared minus 5x plus 3 is equal to mx minus 1. Now taking everything all onto one side because we want it to look like a quadratic, x squared minus 5x minus mx plus 3 plus 1, which then leaves me with x squared minus 5x minus mx plus 4 equals 0. Second. So now what I need to do is just simply factorize this middle part. So I've got x squared minus 5 plus m. It's going to be a plus because I've got a minus outside, when I expand that out, it's going to turn it into a negative. X plus 4 equals 0. It's only worth 1 mark, so you expect to do that in about. So moving on to question B, it then says find the values of m for which the equation and then the equation has equal roots. Now, as it has equal roots, so as it has equal roots, then b squared minus 4ac equals 0. Now, it is really important that you do actually write that. So although it's usually giving you the clue of equal roots, make sure that you write down in your solutions the proof of the discriminants that then refers to. So from this, what we can then do is go on to find out what these values are going to be. So here I've got for b, so here I've got a equals 1, b equals minus 5 plus m, and c equals 4. So substituting this into the discriminant, I've got, and put in square brackets, minus 5m minus 5 minus m, that's squared, minus 4 times 1 times 4, that's equal to 0. So expanding this out, which again is something I'm going to need to do, I end up with, and it's going to be minus, well, let's work out with, let's say minus 5 minus m minus 5. Here I've got 25 plus 5m plus 5m squared. So it comes is 25 plus 10m plus m squared minus 16 equals 0. So from this, what I can then do is simplify it. So I've got m squared plus 10m equals plus 9 equals 0. And does this factorize? Yes, it does. So I've got m plus 9, m plus 1, 0. So m equals minus 9. Alternately, what I could do is with this, I could just plonk it straight into my calculator and it would have given me the solutions problems at all. The next question then says, describe geometrically the situation where m takes either of the values found in part B. Well, the fact that it's got equal roots means that it's going to intercept at one point, and lines that intercept at one point are therefore called tangents. Line tangent to the curve. And there we go for our 1 mark. So moving on to question 4, which refers to polynomials. So here we've got a cubic polynomial. P of x is given by P of x equals x minus 2, x squared plus x plus 3. Show that P of x can be written in the form of blah, where a, b are constant values. So here what we need to do is we just simply need to expand the bracket. So this one's relatively quite straightforward. So here I'm going to do it over x minus 2, x squared plus x plus 3. Expanding the brackets out, I get cubed plus x squared plus 3x minus 2x squared minus 2x 6. Adding them all up, I get x cubed minus x squared plus x minus 6. So here we've got values of a equals minus 1 and b positive 1. So moving on to B, it says prove that the equation only has one real root and state its value. Now if this has one real root, then basically you can see here that this is our only solution. So the only solution is equals 2. Now to show it's only got one solution, what I need to do is show that there's no solutions for this. So need to show no solutions. This. Now one way of showing it's got no solutions is by using discriminants. So here, if so looking at this, all I then need to do is show that b squared minus 4ac, work out the value. So using that what I end up with is, well, A equals 1, B is going to equal 1, and C is going to equal 3. So looking at this, I get 1 squared minus 4 times 1 times 3, which equals 1 minus 12, which equals minus 11. So as B squared minus 4AC is less than 0, solutions. So something along those lines. You probably don't need to go in as much detail as what I've done. It's more of a case of just explaining hopefully to you for it to make sense. So moving on to question 5, we move on to coordinate geometry. So here it says question 5 says circle has center 2 minus 1 and a radius of 5. Point P has coordinates 6, 2. Write down the equation of the circle. So to find the equation of the circle, what I need to do is I need to find out the radius and I need to know the center. So for this, it's probably the most easiest 3 marks, I would say, for this particular question. So here I've got, this is going to be my x1, this is going to be my y1. So what I've got is I've got x minus 2 squared plus y plus 1 squared equals, there is my final answer. Now again, really generously marked. Where the 3 marks would come from is this value here, writing that value there. Now if you were to write it as 5 squared instead of 25, then that would be absolutely fine. There's no essential need for you to expand the powers to write it as 25. If you wrote 5 squared, then that's. Now to verify the point P lies on the circle, well, there's a couple of ways in which you can do this. You can either sub the coordinates into the equation, or the left hand side of the equation, and show it equals 25. But I would say a much preferred way of doing this is basically, an alternate way would be to find the distance between E and C, and if it equals the radius, then now what is really important is you need to state one of these 2 things before you actually start plugging in the numbers. So always make sure that you are writing one of those key statements to justify one of the marks, because just by saying x, y, and just randomly putting it out with no sort of understanding as to what you're doing could cost you a couple of marks. Now I know it's only worth 2 marks, but again, it's not worth that risk. So if you were to substitute it in, you should get the answer of 25, or that the distance of P to C, or CP, is equal to be F5 in terms of that. So again, either of those 2 would be absolutely fine. Now in terms of working out the gradient of CP, well, we've got our coordinate of P, C is here, and so all you need to do is use the formula of y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And again, if I substitute that in, I should get the values of 2 minus 1 over, and it's going to be 6 minus 2, which gives me 3 over 4, or 0.74. So part D says find the gradient of a line that's perpendicular to CP. Well, all I need to do is just do the reciprocal. So that's going to be minus 1 over 3 over 4, which is minus 4 over. And then finally, hence find the equation of the tangent at point P of the circle. So for this, what I need to do is, using the gradient from DI, so here we've got m equals minus 4 over 3, and the coordinates for P are 6, 2. So substituting into the equation of the line, I get y minus 2 equals minus 4 over 3 x minus 6. And then obviously substituting that all in, or taking the 3 over, I get 3y minus 6 equals minus 4x minus 6. Expanding the right hand side, I get 3y minus 6 minus 4x plus 24, giving me 3y plus 4x 30. And again, there's no particular way of how they want me to write the answer. So anything along those lines would be absolutely fine. If anything, you may even, well, actually, will get a mark just for writing this. So any correct formation of the line, so if you've gone that little bit extra and gone all the way to simplifying it, then that is going to be absolutely fine. Like I said, this would get you full marks, but there's always a risk. It's always worth checking. But for 1 mark, if you've got time to do it, do it. If not, for question 6. So with question 6, the question says point A. So again, continue with coordinate geometry. It says point A has coordinates of 1, 1, and point B has coordinates of 5k. And so the line AB has the equation of 3x plus 4y equals 7. Show that k equals 2. So for this, what we need to do is, it's only worth 1 mark. So what we need to do is basically substitute the coordinate into this line. So this, what we need to do, sub x equals 5 and y equals k into 3x plus 4y. So from this we get 3 times 5 plus 4 times k equals 7. So here I've got 15 plus 4k equals 7. 4k equals, and then take the 15 over to give me minus 8. K equals 2. Moving on to part C, it's a case of working out the midpoint of A and B. So to work out the midpoint, it's x plus x1 plus x2 over 2 and y1 plus y2 over 2. So using that formula, we add our 2 x-ordinates, add our 2 y-ordinates, divide them both by 2, and we should have the coordinate of 3 minus 0.5. And you get 1 mark for each ordinate that you get correct. For the next one, we then need to work out the gradients. That's going to be y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So that's going to be minus 2 minus 1 over 5 minus 1, which is minus 3 over 4. Then moving on to CI, it says the line AC is perpendicular to the line AB. Find the gradient AC. So the gradient of AC multiplied by the gradient of AB is going to equal to minus 1. So then to work out the gradient of AC, it's going to be minus 1 over the gradient of AB, which I've already worked on the previous question. So that's minus 1 over minus 3 over 4, which gives me an answer of 4 over 3. I'll definitely leave that as a fraction. Do not be concerned about keeping that as a decimal. Leave it as a fraction. So the next question then says, hence find the equation of the line AC. So m equals 4/3, and the coordinate we don't know what C is, but we know that A is 1, 1. So there was our ordinate. So we've got y minus 1 equals 4 over 3 x minus 1. Now it doesn't ask us to write the equation any shape or form, or so we can leave it as this, or you could write your final equation as 3, expand the brackets and take the 3 over to the side. So I have minus 3y minus 3 equals 4x minus 4, or you could have 3y minus 4x plus 1 equals 0. So anything along those forms is going to be absolutely fine. Now the next question then says, given that C lies on the x-axis, find the x-ordinate. So when something lies on the x-axis, it means that y is going to equal 0. So if it lies on the x-axis, y equals 0. So what I need to do is let y equal 0, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to substitute it into this equation. So I've got 3y minus 4x plus 1 equals 0. So if y equals 0, I'm going to have 0 minus 4x plus 1 equals 0. Rearranging this, I get minus 4x equals minus 1. So x equals 1/4, and there is my final answer. Now moving on to question 7, which moves on to logs. So it says, given that n satisfies the equation you can see on the screen, and what we need to do is show that we can write this as a quadratic. So first things first, what I'm going to do is we're going to break this up. So I've got 2 log a n minus log a 5 minus 24 equals log a 4. Now from this, what we're then going to do is let's move this 2 over as a power. So I've got log a n squared and then minus log a 5n and minus 24 log 4. Now from this, what I can then do is join these two things up. So here I'm going to use the rules of logs. So when I'm taking away, I'm actually dividing. So it's going to be log a, it's going to be n squared over 5n minus 24. That all equals 4. Now from this, what we can then work out is, well, we've both got log a's on both sides, so I can kind of cancel them out. So what I'm left with is n squared over 5n 4 equals 4. Now if I take this denominator over to the other side, I get n squared equals 4, then 5n minus 24. Expand the bracket, 20n minus, and it's going to be 96. And then if I take all of this over to the side to make it equal to 0, which is basically what they're wanting me to do here, n squared minus 20n plus 96 equals 0. Actually going to prove what they wanted me to. Now in terms of b, it then says hence find the values of n. So all I need to then do is go on to solve this. So here what I want to do is factorize if I can. So let me just write out the equation again. Now alternatively, you can just simply stick it into your calculator and use your equation solver to do it. But this does factorize nicely. So I've got n minus 8, n minus 12 equals 0. So n equals 8, 12. There is my final answer. So moving on to question 8, which again continues with logs. It says given that log ax equals 3, log a6 minus log a8, where a is a positive constant, show that x equals 27. So again, what you want to do here is try and get it written as a single logarithm. So what I want to try and do, my aim is to try and combine these two things here. So here I've got 3 log a6 minus log a8. Now this one here is absolutely fine. It's this one that I need to change. So I need to move the 3 to the front. So here I've got log a6 cubed minus log a8. And again, using the rules of logs, when you're taking away, it's dividing. So I've got log a, and it's going to be 6 cubed, which is 216 if I've last checked. Let me just double check to make sure that it is. And then underneath that, I've got divided by 8. And that all equals log ax. So from this, now that I've got single logarithms, I can cross them off. So x equals 216 divided by 8, which gives me an answer of 27. I need to show that it is. Then moving on to question B. And so this should be relatively quite straightforward. Now, I'll be honest, if you've got the Casio FX991EX calculator, then this should really be absolute bread and butter to you, because you just got to type it into your calculator, press the equals, and you get your answer. So here we should have a value of 0, 1, and 0.5 or a half, and the final one is 1. Or you can write it as 3 over 2. Now moving on to the probability question that we have here. Now again, for this I might have to shrink it down just so that we've got enough space on the screen. But let's have a look. So it says following a flood, 120 tins were recovered from Dharmesh's corner shop. Unfortunately, the water had washed off all the labels off the tins. 50 contained pet food, 20 contained peas, 35 contained beans, and the rest contained soup. A little bit, yeah. I'm not sure the question and the namings is rather politically correct and maybe a little bit stereotypical. But let's not go into that, even though, yeah, let's leave it as it is. Right, so in terms of this, it says Dharmesh selects a tin at random, find the probability that one, it contains soup. So for this, we have, so from this, we've got out of 120, how many of these contain soup? and it's going to be, well, it's going to be 120 minus 50 minus 20 is 35. Again, if I just type that straight into my calculator, 15, which simplifies to give me 8th. Now the next question then says, what's the probability that it does not contain any pet food? Now again, obviously with this, if you wanted to write it as decimal equivalent, you also get 4 marks for that. Like I said, just stay away from percentages. If it's a nasty number, leave it as a fraction. So for A2, it says, so in terms of this, does not contain pet food. So not contain what? 120 minus 50 is 70. So it's going to be 70 over 120. And that into my calculator to simplify gives me 7 over 12. Is fine. Or you could convert it as a decimal, which is not. For B, it says that Domus selects 2 tins at random without replacement. Find the probability that. Now, you'd be very, very tempted to draw a tree diagram, but for 2 marks, 3 marks, you really need to go ask your question of, is it really necessary? Now, if you're a bit more proactive and think, right, let's have a look at what other questions might be, because you might find that for this particular question, you don't have to draw a tree diagram, but it may come in handy for latter questions. So again, it's entirely up to you which one you want to go for. So for this, it says that Domus selects 2 tins without replacement. Find probability that both contain P's. So P's is 20 out of 120. So the first one will be 20 out of 120. Then if you've already selected one, there'll be 19 left out of 119 tins. And if you work that out, it simplifies to be 19 over 714, which written as a decimal gives me 0.026. Then it says one contains pet food and the other contains peas. Now, one contains pet food. Well, let's go for, that's going to be 50 over 120, and the other contains peas, which is 20 over, and it's going to be 119, or, which is mathematically probability wise plus, I could have it the other way around. So I could have the peas being selected first and the pet food selected second. Is this, or you could just simply times one of them by 2 and you still get the same answer, in which you should have the answer of 50 over 357, or 0.13 marks. Now again, it's always important you show you're working out. Even if you're doing this on your calculator, just write down what you're typing in your calculator, because like I said, for 3 marks, you're not going to get 3 marks just simply by writing down one number. You need to show evidence about where it's come from. Now for C, it then says Domus selects 3 tins at random without replacement. Find the probability that one contains pet food, one contains peas, one contains beans. Now, in terms of this, what we want to look at is recognizing that the probabilities are going to be the same. So for here, you could have pet food, or let's go for pet, peas, and beans. So if I just call this A, B, C, so the combinations I could have are A, B, C, A, C, B, B, A, C, B, C, A, and C, B, A, C, B. So there are a total of 6 combinations in total. Now the probabilities of each row is going to be exactly the same. Even though the numbers in the fraction will be slightly different, it's still going to give you the same answer. So here what I need to do for part C is look at A, which is pet food, which was 50 over 120, multiplied by peas, which is 20 over 119, times beans, which is 35 over. Now that's just one outcome, but if I multiply that by 6, now for each of these other rows, the numbers are going to be the same, they're just going to be jumbled up. So the numerators are going to be jumbled up, the denominators are going to be jumbled up, but when you multiply them, the order doesn't make a difference, you're still going to get the same answers. So that's why we're not having to work out each individual one, and that's why the combination comes in handy. So from this, what you should have is the final answer of 125 over 1003, or you can write it as a decimal, which is Now moving on to question D, it says find the probability that Darmish will have to open more than two tins before she finds one that does not contain pet food. So she wants to find two cans. So basically what this question is asking for is probability of getting a pet can, or tin I should say, and another pet tin. So that's going to be 50 over 120 multiplied by 49 over 119, which gives me 35 over 204, or I could write it as a decimal as 0.172 to 3 decimal places. So moving on to question 10, it's related to binomial probability. So reading the question, it says that an amateur tennis club purchases tennis balls that have been used previously in professional tournaments. Probability that each such ball falls a standard bounce test is 0.15. The tennis club purchases boxes, each containing 10 of these tennis balls. Assume that the 10 balls in any box represent a random sample. So it says determine the probability that the number of balls in a box will fail the bounce test is at most 2. So let's have a look at the probability. Now first of all, whenever you're doing a binomial probability, always important that you set the parameters. So here my x is going to be binomially distributed with a sample size of 10 because there are 10 balls in a box, and the probability of a fail is 0.1. So that there is my n. So for AI, it's asking for most 2. So I want the probability that x is less or equal to 2. Now for this, I could just bung it straight into my calculator using the BCD feature, or you could use whatever formula, but for 1 mark, I'll just go straight into your calculator. You should have the answer of 0.82. Part 2, it says at least 2. So this is the probability where x is greater or equal to 2. Now that is equal to 1 minus the probability that x is less or equal to 1. So working that out, you should have 1 minus 0.5443, which gives me an answer of 0.4. And there is my answer. For question 3, it's asking for more than 1 but fewer than 5. So probability that x is got to be greater than 1 and less. So it's not inclusive of those numbers. So what I'm wanting is a probability that x is less or equal to 4 minus the probability that x is less or equal to 1. Think about the numbers that you want. So I want 4, 3 and 2. Now if you want to, you could work out those 3 individual probabilities and add it together, or you could use the sort of process of elimination of bits that you want over things that you don't want. You should come up to the correct answer, if you've done this correctly, of 0.448. Now if you've done it the inequality way, then this value here should be roughly around 0.99. We should have 0.99 something, and this one here is going to be 0.5443. I know that one, on that here, and you should get your correct answer, 0.458. Then moving on to B, so it says determine the probability that in 5 boxes. Now 5 boxes, the total number of balls, we're still looking at the total number of balls, but we've got 5 boxes. So here I'm going to have 5 times 10, which is 50. So n equals 50. So my parameters changed, which I need to then state the new parameters, and it's still going to be 0.15. So from this, what I then need to do is work this out. So the probability of more than 5, and that's going to be equal to 1 minus the probability that x is less or equal to 5. And again, if you work that out and type it into your calculator, you should have the correct answer of 0.7806. And then finally for BII, so we want at least 5 but most 10, so I want 5, then what equals 10. And so that's going to be, I can calculate that by well, you can either work out 9, 8, 7, 6, which are the numbers that I want individually, add them together, or you can work out probability that x is less or equal to 9 minus the probability that x is less or equal to 5. Type that into your calculator and you should have the final answer of 0.7680. So 3 marks, but it's really important that you do show your clear working out. So for question BII, it's important that you do translate the question, write down what it is you're working out, write down the probabilities, which really I should have done, but just to save a bit of time, in which you should have the numbers something along the lines of 0.8801 and 0.1121 for your probability of x is less or equal to 9 and less or equal to 5, and you work it out, you should get 7680. But always make sure that you are looking at how many marks are on offer and making sure that your marks do justify it. I'll be honest, you're not going to get marks just by simply translating the question into basic mathematical notation of using inequalities. Your marks start from this and stating your values in between. And there we have completed the mix sheet. Now the test is marked out of 80 marks. It's really difficult to grade anything like this because we've only selected just a handful of topics, and also looking at the difficulty in the question, it really isn't, like I said, it's difficult to grade. But I would say out of 80 marks, any percentage score around about the 80% mark is looking good for moving forward. Anything below 50% probably need some work on. I definitely would look at the topic list of the questions that you've got wrong, maybe go back, revise them, and maybe have a go at the questions again, or maybe just sit in anticipation for the next installment of a mix sheet.